Coast insights, talk that truth. Big city question.
All right, rock and roll, ladies and gentlemen. What's up? Tuesday, 12 o'clock, 1,000-year plan. Back at ya. I'm your host, Kenji Shimada. Today, oh man, it's a drizzly, rainy day here on the coast, but it is still a fun day. I've got a jam-packed guest list today. I'm actually super stoked. I've had the privilege of talking to my guests that are coming on today in multiple occasions. All people I feel are building, and just really on the cutting edge of tools and applications, and just in terms of how these people are thinking right now of the usage of the tools, but also implications of what it means for their business, and how we can optimize, how we can utilize for the most efficient way is what we're going to be wrapping this conversation into today. There's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of hype. So I'm bringing in the people that are using, all the tools very functionally inside of their businesses, some of their insights, and some of the key takeaways that they're getting from these things, and share it to the people that are listening. So without further ado, once again, I'm your host, Kenji Shimada, but today I've got Demelza Green, who is coming in from Patient Zero and 10,000 Spoons. Demelza is a creative who builds businesses and a business builder who stays creative. If you check out any of her content on LinkedIn and all these other places, she is very creative with how she's putting out her content. I'm actually going to share an image from her 10,000 Spoon website because I love it. And the gap between brand and tech, that's where she's working, and that's where all these growth is happening. In Patient Zero is a consulting development agency that helps enterprises, government grows custom software, and 10,000 Spoons is the underdog. And so we're serving the underdog, small businesses and startups that traditionally cannot afford like the big enterprise talent pool. I've got Greg Thatcher coming in from Pipeline Capital. Greg is the entrepreneur in residence and head of venture capital at Pipeline Capital. And he's also an active founder working on legal tech and in the fintech startups. And last but very much not least, I've got Mike Nedelko, who's joining us, who's the CEO of Syncope AI. And Mike is a technical CPO and AI researcher, currently bridging the US and Australian tech scenes. And he is spearheading Fleet Guru AI's maintenance intelligence co-pilot and advising firms in San Francisco, New York, and the Gold Coast with their AI transformations. So to all our beautiful and wonderful guests, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us. Good to see you, Demelza. Good to see you, Greg.
Hello.
I was going to say, I'm looking forward to this chat today, as I mentioned, because I know that all of you guys are heavily in building, using, getting creative with a lot of the tools that are out there at the moment. And like I said at the beginning, I'd love to really talk about what you're using, what's goss, what's not, what's hype, what didn't work out. I'd love to happily stretch the conversation of obviously technology, where this is all going. Human in the loop seems to be, a very consistent conversation that everyone is having. What does that mean for each of you? And then full circle back, what do we do with our day-to-day actions? And so first and foremost, I might just go around the table and just ask, what are some of the tools you're using right now, and what have you ditched, and what are these things being used for? So I might start off with Demelza. If you'd like to take the stage, if you want to talk about high level Patient Zero and 10,000 Spoons as well, please feel free to contextualize the usage.
Yeah, cool. So obviously I got two businesses that serve different parts of the market. So enterprise, government is Patient Zero. So we are geared to, I guess, the big dogs, and we have 10,000 Spoons, which is geared towards the underdogs, which is around the small businesses and startups. We've been in the software development space. Well, I've been in the software development space for 20 years now. So I guess I've seen 20 years worth of evolution. And obviously this is the biggest evolution that I guess we've ever had in this space, which has definitely been quite interesting. I do more than software development though. I work in sales and marketing and people, brand, like all of the parts, I guess, that hangs together a business. And the tools that I'm using is looking to where I can operationally help myself and others, but also how we help our customers in the services that we deliver. In engineering, it's an interesting space, and especially for us because we got two different modes. So we got we call it mode 1 and mode 2. It doesn't really have like fancy names or anything, but mode 1 is sort of like government and enterprise, which is like how do we turn on Copilot and look at AI assisted development. And then I guess it's mode 2, which is around agentic AI and how far you can go along the edge of where things are going. So the tooling, I guess the approaches are kind of quite different in the two different modes. And I do a lot, I guess, in the brand and marketing space as well, which again is a whole nother set of tools, a whole nother set of, I guess, frontier models that do creative work that's different from development work as well. So things that are like kind of hot tools right now is obviously Claude Code. You'd be silly to not say that that's the number one thing that's happening in engineering at the moment, but also is OpenClaw, which is an orchestrating agent that can sit over the top of many different agents. So in Patient Zero, we use, I guess, more Claude Code with Copilot because of enterprise restrictions a lot of the time. But in 10,000 Spoons, we use OpenClaw with Claude Code a lot of the times, and some of the other models as well. I have licenses to every frontier model, so I actually switch between them all the time, depending on, I guess, how people are performing in the benchmark. So I always keep on top of how each of the frontier models are performing, and then I switch based on that as well. So that's my personal workflow outside of an orchestration workflow. But we're predominantly from custom engineering background, so we're really looking at the tools that can help us custom all of our workflows. None of this, I guess, off-the-shelf type of AI workflow tooling, if that makes sense.
Interesting. And you just on the in terms of the creative side, what are some of the things you're using there? Because I know you're very active in creating some creative content for 10,000 and Patient Zero.
Yeah, it's all different depending on videography, obviously graphic design, product design, and also content as well. And then when you look at content, depending on the type of content you're actually looking at, depends on the different type of model that's actually sort of leading in that space. And I do a lot around marketing as well. And that definitely differs to what model is best for determining, it's kind of like structural integrity of a website and looking at good, I wouldn't say SEO practices because SEO is actually dead. And if anyone is out there spouting that they're targeting like good SEO, I'd say you are well behind the times because it has moved on since then. So again, I actually oscillate between them. I oscillate between like the image generation and especially around like graphic design, between obviously, what is it, Nano Banana, which is formed part of Gemini now, so you can just prompt inside of it for a lot of image generation, and Neo, which is their tool for, I guess, video generation. And then I also use ChatGPT for a lot of image generation. Even though they've gotten rid of their, or they're getting rid of their Sora platform, which is never actually as good as what you could just do in ChatGPT direct.
Surprising what they still got at the moment. I still use a few images through that, Gemini and ChatGPT. So that's cool to hear. Awesome. Actually, I'm keen to plug, obviously, Greg will speak into this as well, about how OpenClaw is sort of shifting. So thank you, Demelza. Mr. Thatcher, I might get you to jump in. And what are you currently using inside of your ecosystem?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm like a former coder, so I'm very, very old. So when I first started coding back in like 2000, I was hard coding everything, and then I got away from coding. I went into marketing, did a bunch of stuff. I did a degree in economics and worked in banking for a while, and then with all these new tools, I'm back hands on the coding again, and it's not coding as much as it is prompting, but it's it just feels good to be building again. And I guess my path has been kind of the path of somebody who's kind of coming back to it. So I started with probably like a lovable type thing for vibe coding. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Replit, oh, that's pretty good. And now I've fully graduated. I'm fully back into a Claude Code, CLI, hardcore, just 10 screens open, coding as much as I can. and pushing out as much stuff to dev and prod as I can. So my and we're building stuff daily and with like straight CLI cloud code. So that's what's happening in the business, which is pretty cool. I'm not that dissimilar to Demelza in that we're also using it for marketing and across a whole bunch of different business units. I'm using NanoClaw as opposed to OpenClaw. It's a slightly smaller version of OpenClaw. It's a little bit more secure. It can be run on like a really small VPS. So I'm using that and orchestrating a bunch of marketing functions, which is unbelievable. Instead of using Nano Banana directly, I use FAL, so FAL.ai. It has all of the top models, so the ByteDance models, and it's basically just a repository for all the models, and I allow NanoClaw to kind of choose which model to use for which service, or for whatever kind of the output that I'm looking for. It does a bunch of research on what is good, finds the right model to build the right thing, and then presents me with dozens of options for what what we can push to prod. I select which ones I want, and it sets off a scheduling program. It's the new marketing stack, so to speak, is effectively going to be agentic, right? We're going to have agents talking to Google Search Console, Google Ads, Google Analytics, and collecting all of that data, presenting it to somebody who makes decisions, and then just gives them another task to do, and off they go and do that. And they're kind of always in contact with the analytics, so it's constantly improving itself. I feel like the new marketing stack is going to be fully agentic with some human in the loop to make sure it stays on task. I'm not sure if that's the experience that you've had, Demelza, but that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, very, very similar there, Greg. And what I find interesting though is, I guess, around content creation, especially around written content creation, and how you avoid the AI slop, because it creates a lot of crap. Like, let's be honest, put its boundaries and give it examples. It still sometimes goes left, right, sideways, and you kind of go, I could have just written that quickly, like more fast myself. And in 2026, especially with, I guess, all of the bots that our AI overlords that we've got to appease in the marketing space, the information gain score is what's most important in 2026, and that's new content that AI doesn't already have. So if it's the one creating it, it's not really new. It's not stuff that it's actually gaining. And it's looking for contrarian views and different viewpoints that it doesn't already have. And I find it really interesting because there's like this new role that's being created in the US that is paid $800K a year, and it's called a storyteller. And I'm like, seriously?
Sweet.
And so they go around from executive to executive and literally just pull out all of these stories to make, I guess, that sort of marketing collateral, whether it be their company brand or their personal brand, to try and get those stories that haven't been pulled out before to kind of appease the bots in that area. So yeah, it's like there is an element that can be automated, and I guess you can use AI for, but you still really need that human voice and insight, perspective, and contrarian views, as well as the spelling mistakes and grammar things that make things human as well.
Yeah, I saw somebody say the other day that if you get a message on LinkedIn and there's no spelling mistakes and there's no, it's definitely a bot that sent that to you. There's a bit of a trick to getting opens these days, is sending your emails with a maybe 2 spaces or something like that to make sure that it looks like a human.
Yeah.
the
M dashes, like no M dashes, people, like down with M dash.
Oh my god, it's so, I don't know what you call it. It just infiltrates everything. Awesome. And now I want to keep diving into this, but before I do, Mr. Mike Nedelko, I'd love for you to chime in and just share. Obviously, these are these tools, and you are deep into a few projects right now. Running teams as well. So what's currently on your table? What are you using?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, it's everything that has been said before, a part of somewhat our tool chain as well, somewhat reflective of what everyone else has been using. But I think the distinction that you just made, a lot of times we're running engineering teams or working with engineering teams to build entirely new products, usually in businesses that have already scaled, so are more at the enterprise level, or are currently in the throngs of scaling very heavily. And what that means is that our tool chain covers both, from a coding agent perspective, obviously, the Anthropics of this world have gotten hold of our attention as well. When I'm traveling or when I'm on a plane, I don't have internet access. The only difference is that I'm probably using Claude Code with some Olama in an offline mode with a reasonably beefy laptop that allows me to run some DeepSeek 8B locally, which tends to be really, really neat. But other than that, it's mostly about the frameworks that we're using and the engineering principles that we're building around them. So mostly, right, that means LangGraph, LangChain, strands, Pi being increasingly used in projects, and then the engineering principles that are required in order to bring the things and the features that you're building to a production workload, which anyone who's ever worked on production workloads driven by generative AI in any way, form, or shape knows is an entirely different ballgame than the POC world. So we're talking evaluation-driven development with frameworks like Ragas, all the way through to various principles, including structured message routing, dispatch, some of the things that you're seeing inside of OpenClaw as well, such as hierarchical fallback mechanisms, so model resilience and fallback cascades for your models should one provider not respond to your queries, making everything configuration driven, so that if you need to change the behavior or adjust system prompts, you are not required to run an entire deployment, right? You can just do that through the end variables, as well as things like structured message routing for multi-channel communication, similar to what you're currently seeing is being used very heavily in the recently widened AI community through tools such as OpenClaw, but more adapted to an enterprise setting where things tend to be more secure, more bespoke, more aligned with the requirements that the various businesses that we're working with have. If that makes sense.
I love sounding like I'm the idiot here, like it's but it's beautiful because this is like, I just know that you guys are deep in it right now, right? So like you guys are building hard. And I guess with that context, kind of like what you, Greg and Demels, you just chatting about just then, I was going through, my LinkedIn, I was like inviting people to this chat and just really looking at a lot of those small, medium businesses, right? And Demel's obviously 10,000 Spoons. You said this is going to become an AI native business. We're realizing these tools are starting to have implications to people that have, high overheads or trying to go competitive into these markets. I'm happy to open to this floor right now of following with like what's working right now, what's a little bit of, even like you said, with those emails, with the content that's coming out, what are things that you're realizing are this needs to remain to become impactful whilst using these tools, and what's helping these small medium businesses to take it to the next level?
Is that to
I'm gonna chuck it onto anybody at the moment, but Greg,
what I would, so I guess the one thing I would say is the scope, maybe, or the range at which people are adapting or adopting to AI right now is very broad. So I feel like in this office, we're kind of tip of the spear, kind of at the front end of that bell curve. If there's a bell curve of adoption, we're quite far on the right hand side of that graph. But you meet people that own businesses and run businesses that are very, very much on the other side of that graph, right? That the either early adoption, maybe they're using a little bit of ChatGPT just to do some either generation stuff or just some research. For the small to medium sized businesses, I think AI can be offering the biggest benefit. The biggest companies obviously have big budgets and lots of people. They're their ability to adapt and adopt is, at least in terms of resources, is very, very easy. The small to medium-sized companies have the biggest amount of the amount of adoption they can bring on. So if they can kind of really get to the fighting end of AI, they can really dominate they can have a lot more, I guess, what would you say, exposure to their customers. They can have a lot more kind of benefits than a large company.
Yeah, and I was going to ask. I was going to also ask, because we were at the Simon Beard thing. What do you think about that sort of advice? Because he was just full open claw, get it in your system, put it in, plug it into everything. Like, what do you say to that?
So I think he literally said, whatever it was, all gas, no brakes. Like his open claw was as open as it can get. And although there is some benefit to doing that for small to medium-sized businesses, and I think, to be fair, I think most of the audience there was that kind of small to medium-sized customer.
Yep.
It was good to have 1,000 people at that event. It was good to have that many people kind of looking at adoption of AI. OpenClaw may not be the best thing for those clients, but the fact that they were there and open to it is really, really, those are the people that are going to be getting the most out of AI, and at least having their eyes open to what is available. So I think, all gas, no brakes is probably not the way they want to run their business. And I think most of the people there would probably agree with that. Simon Beard, as an outlier, and he is an outlier, let's face it. So.
Yep. Yeah. And I guess, sorry, Demelza, you can say.
I was just going to say, I guess in my experience, I talk with small businesses or, startups are obviously, they kind of understand tech and they're on the edge of where things are. But small businesses have traditionally been like, I don't understand at all any of the language that you're talking about. Like, how do I get A from B without all of the jargon that kind of sits in between? And, we started 10,000 Spoons, I guess, before AI kind of evolved to where it is. So we already had that type of model of how do you get, for small businesses, I guess, really good talent for a fraction of the cost that actually can help them be. Because we were talking to the Queensland Small Business Commissioner or something, and she was saying that 60% of small businesses fail because of tech choices. And I was like, wait, what? It's like, because of tech choices? And so even with the advancement of AI, like, we don't go and talk to small businesses and say, look at all the stuff that we can do with like native AI engineering and agentic AI, and we've got OpenClaw, because they're just like, whoa. And we can get what you need fast and for cheaper than it's ever been before, because it really needs to be an outcome-based conversation of what does it actually mean to them, rather than, I guess, all that sort of jargon in between. But we do have, I guess, a really great advantage for them, because they can pay for a service that they were just paying before to another traditional agency, and now they've got a full agency behind a person that can get them more for like a fraction of the cost. And I think that's
I like
quite
the idea of outcome based. That I feel like even the future of SaaS becomes outcome based, right? So like the idea of paying for seats of something seems to be a thing of the past, and we will be paying for outcomes. It's kind of how we're currently paying for tokens, right? So pay-as-you-go tokens, they're API based. We're paying literally for outcomes in that respect. I think the idea of paying for outcomes is actually a really, really easy thing for businesses to understand. They can build it into their unit economics. They can effectively bake it into their pricing and make sure that they're making money.
Yeah.
But having said that, and we talked a little bit about this on the weekend,
We did,
Greg, which on Saturday. I think one of the biggest changes that is going to for sure stick around is the value transition we're seeing in technology, and specifically in software development, right? Because previously, the value in software was essentially that it provided process at scale, right? You built a particular system. Maybe that system asked for a little bit of an input, and then based on that input, the system would sort of like lead you down a predetermined workflow that resulted in an outcome. And the value of the software that you built came essentially from the workflow, which allows your customers or your customers' teams to accomplish that outcome either faster or cheaper. And that's all it was. The change that we're seeing right now And I wasn't at the OpenClaw event, but I believe
You missed
in
it,
spirit
Mike.
at least. I missed it. Yeah, I was in Singapore at the time. I think in spirit at least, right? One of the things that OpenClaw introduced was the introduction of these self-evolving skill-based systems where the system you are building implements its own workflow, right? And what that does is that your value software proposition, right? So the value that the software derives doesn't come anymore from its workflow, right? What we're increasingly seeing today is that the value is now delivering an outcome straight away, right? Put in a query, it delivers the outcome for you. Forget the workflow in the middle. And what that means is that now the role of software engineers and designers and developers is not, and product managers most importantly, is not to map out a process anymore. It's to build a system where every user can use their own process to get the outcome they need, right? And that tends to be a massive paradigm shift that is going to affect how we design, plan, and build software, but also, Craig, to your point, right, how we're structuring business models. And I think not a lot of people have gotten their head around that just yet, because in order to build software in this way, right, you need to essentially go out and build your own standards, good practices, and frameworks, because
It's a lot
opposed
of
to,
work.
the old SaaS world, we cannot rely, or we don't have the luxury of relying on proven frameworks that have existed for 10, 15, 20 years, right? We need to figure things out like security, right? How do you do message routing? How do you make sure that it is reliable, right? How do we make sure that even though the system is entirely probabilistic and reasons through non-deterministic thinking pathways, it delivers a predictable and reliable outcome, and do so at scale that can grow with the business. And that is a challenge that I think a lot of people are going to dive into, not knowing much, because there's not much to be learned aside from experimentation at this point.
I think that's just a point in like software development. Like we know about the citizen developer. That's nothing new, right? So low code systems, or them getting around and playing even with basics of HTML and things like that, right? There's been an evolution of citizen developer over time, and now they've obviously got their hands on what would be a very smart PhD junior with no common sense. And there were messes created before, and there's going to be messes created again, but just on another scale that we can't really fathom, because you do really need a skilled orchestrator that knows how to ask the right questions, knows how to move in between like a teacher-student mindset and flow, which is a whole kind of metacognitive like capability that people have to be able to have to know when they should be either one of those things, and know how to smell the BS, which used to be smelling the BS from a human developer, but now you've got to do it from a whole bunch of really smart agents, which were technically replicated based on human behavior, right? So they do actually tend to hide a lot of the mistakes that they make. And you can't just trust everything that it actually tells you or says that it's actually done as well. So I'm quite concerned about the amount of people that will have access to something, building production-based systems. They might even be storing personal information about people and not having any idea like how that's even treated, handled along the way. So
yeah, I think the first real unlock might be for guys in Mike's role, product people that do understand, the structures and what needs to happen, but also understand the customer, the problem, that kind of connection point where they were talking to developers and passing on what the problem was, that becomes like the critical part where those people can actually start putting their fingers into the codes now, instead of now, translating it to a Jira ticket, and then that Jira ticket getting picked up, and or whatever the lost in translation is from either the founder or whatever the original problem is, through to the developers actually building that feature. There's now people closer to the problem that can start solving that problem.
And I think this is like a perfect like question I'd love to ask, because it's hot topic right now, right? Because Claude Code, I'd love to get into it. It's obviously, it's a browser on people's LLMs, they can chat to it, and a few things are coming out, like you said, the simple guide right now, HTML, cool things, But then I just would love to hear from you guys, like OpenClaw, right? like you said, Simon Beer's talking about it. It's coming out more. But as you said, Demelza, it's like, what's it going to take to actually put this? Is like, how real is it, for these small to medium businesses to actually implement this? How real is it to have something that's actually, functional and, like not so much BS output coming, like what is that actually going to take for these people to put that in place? And, where's the cost benefit ratios to this?
Yeah, I can maybe try to respond to that and help, with the things that I completely agree with everything that you just said, Craig and Demelza, around, there needing to be some human grounding. And I think because, we're talking about the next 1,000 years as well in the show, right? And it is probably worthwhile highlighting that for the AI hype cycle, where it is currently at, it is probably at its highest that it has ever been, to the point where I heard someone say the other day that the worst people of crypto have now come over and are doing the same thing in the AI space. 100% accurate.
It felt like a crypto conference the other day.
So I'm not. Yeah. Anyways, glad we were able to put these two things together. But what we're ultimately seeing, particularly with things like OpenClaw, is this impersonation of the Silicon Valley transhumanist vision of the future, which is what they call the intelligence explosion, right? And the theory behind that is incredibly simple, right? Which is, if you build an AI capable of writing better code than a human, right, it will just build a better AI, which builds an even better one, and so on and so on. But it is worthwhile highlighting that very recently, there has been mathematical proof that that is not the case. There was a paper that was published. It's a fantastic read. Anyone who gets their hand on it, please go and read it. It's called The Devil Behind Mould Book, where some very talented researchers from the universities in China and in the US proved that if left alone, agents interacting with each other in a closed system don't magically spin up into some sort of godlike intelligence. They spiral down into madness. And the reason for this is cold, hard physics. It's the second law of thermodynamics, which suggests that in a closed system, entropy or disorder always increases over time. And what that means is that no matter what kind of agent cluster or agent application we're talking about, right? If your goal is to build an agent cluster that approves itself and you entirely leave it alone, it will not spin up into some sort of omni-competent solution for any problem that you might have, which is unfortunately parts of what the open Claude, the uninformed parts of the open Claude community are promising, because what we need is the human grounding, like the answer what you mentioned. Right?
Yeah, I was just going to say to clarify, that's what you're saying right now, that like without this, and like you said, Demelza, without someone being able to look at it, observe it, is it bullshit? Is the back end clean? Like for the people that think that like, oh yeah, I'll just go in and I'll stick it in, and I'll set it up, right? Like that's not as easy as like I plug in my USB or I download, Descript on my laptop or something. It's far more than that, right?
Correct. And the other thing is also, a lot of people and a lot of this hype cycle, one must understand, is purely driven by the monetary interests of people who have borrowed a ton of money that need to keep telling great
money
stories in order
people.
to justify all those amounts, right? And so when people are talking about, AGI is coming next year, by the way, it's been coming for the last 3 years, so it's not here yet, or about the singularity, if you're thinking about this, the singularity that I imagine is not AI taking over through a runaway process where, agents collectively decide to somehow leave us out of the loop and that will then lead to some sort of super intelligence. Rather, I think what we're going to experience is the barriers to research, to coding, to synthesizable knowledge are now so low and so affordable that every human being, no matter where they are in their professional journey, can at least now participate in frontier entrepreneurship, frontier research, artistic expression. Now, participation doesn't mean succeeding, and you should definitely look at advice from for example, your company, Demalza, to understand which direction you're going, and that you shouldn't be, putting public or private keys into your GitHub repo or give them to your agent to do that for you, right? That is very, very important. But ultimately, these tools are so powerful that they allow us to level up in terms of the small atomic contributions that we can make in order to, solve the oceans of problems that we're currently facing, whether that's in business or in other areas.
Oh man, amen. And I'd love to hear from you guys, Demelza, Greg, of what is it looking for you guys? What's that sort of functional, practical advice right now that you tell to these people? Because I've tried building just for the shits and giggles, right? Like I can build, until I find out the quality of the back is not great. I don't even know where the back end lives in some things, and then you start to scale. I've spent 8 hours doing a task that takes 15 minutes, and this bang for buck truly for these small, medium businesses.
Depends also what you're trying to do and what your outcome is. I think it's really good for what you're doing, probably to build a proof of concept and to demonstrate an idea. But I guess taking that to market might be a bit of a different question. And I don't think there's anything new in software development. I think AI tooling is just another avenue towards that. We've seen this sort of there are specific developers that are out there, I must say, that are really good at development, and they like to go on tech adventures and create big messes. And you see that a lot in small businesses, more than in enterprise, because they can only afford one small, cheap developer. It might be offshore somewhere, or it might be here, but they're not someone who's a quality developer, and they don't understand that. So I think the mess is still there, no matter what. But yeah, it does create that opportunity, given you're partnering with the right person, I think, to be able to move really quickly and create software very quickly as well. An example of, one of the customers we got in 10,000 spoons is a feature that might have taken us, traditionally 2 weeks to do, takes about half a day now. So, the time to market and I guess the time to realize value has increased massively, and that's a massive competitive advantage. And you want to do that in the right way, because we can actually compete now with offshore developers, which is an interesting change and turn, because of the speed of which we can develop and how much cheaper it's actually gotten. But you've also got the value of having someone who is next to you, who's in the same time zone, that I guess is culturally aligned as well, that can help ease some of the overhead and tensions that you have. So I think it's really interesting that now we're kind of competing with offshore. We can bring a lot of that stuff back onto Australian shores, which is also really exciting, because we're all about sovereignty in 2026, and I think geopolitics is just really reinforcing that all day right now. But it's a big trend that everyone's trying to get to be a lot more Australian based. And the death of SaaS, we've talked about SaaS a little bit. I, for one, am super excited about this because it is absolutely fraudulent what these companies have been doing for decades, which they go in and they say, this is just 1 million for a website, and it ends up being like 100 million. And I'm like, what the actual is going on? It's just fraudulent. And so I've been really annoyed with what they've done in that space. And if you ever see some of our co-CO series, those videos, we have a whistleblower episode. So just please laugh. We just started talking about those big SaaS players. And they are in trouble. They have been running around trying to secure long-term deals, 5 years minimum. They're lowering their per seat kind of cost at the moment, because they can see the writing on the wall. And you can see that they're all crashing on the stock market as well. But it's really easy, honestly, to point an agent at a website and say, can you just build that for me from scratch, without having to know the code or anything else behind it. And that even poses a greater question for IP in the world of what this all means. And I think that's a big question, for entrepreneurs right now as well, because they traditionally thought IP was their code, but it's not anymore. The value lives.
If I take off my founder hat and put on my VC hat for a second, it is one of the things we talk about a lot in here. So we are talking about what is defensible these days. And it used to be, exactly to your point, it used to be that, well, we've been developing this thing and our code took 2 years to build. That's our moat. The next person is going to have to start from there. And now the next person can literally start, to your point, of getting a login, getting through your site, and building it in a week. So those businesses, I'm not going to say go to zero, but man, they're hard to defend. So what becomes defensible? Of course, you have your hardware software plays. So there's certain tools out there that are tied to hardware. The hardware is hard in venture speak. So those have a little bit more defensibility. I think people that are particularly product / customer focused, so products that are coming out that spend a lot of time understanding the problem and understanding, I think that there's going to be a real emphasis on the tools that come out of say incubators or startups that are really focused on those problems. Will have a little bit more defensibility. And then maybe just marketing and branding, like maybe just going fast with customer acquisition. If your unit economics can be right, then you can have a successful business. But the other thing that is the models that we have now and Cloud Code today, which is unbelievable, is the worst it's ever going to be, right? Like the next version with they've already kind of announced Mythos is meant to be like another next level, like step change. And what does that mean for us? And what does that mean for IP? We're already seeing companies aren't raising, big dollars anymore. They're raising a lot smaller because they need a lot smaller team. They can grow stuff. So we're seeing it, on the coal face of people coming in looking at raising money. It is hard to allocate right now because just trying to define what is defensible is actually a big question that we're asking. And that's not just for our super early stage stuff. It's for our later stage stuff. It's for our public investments. It's for everything. What is defensible is a big problem at the moment. Network effect is a big thing. IP is not a thing anymore, I think.
So relationships, though.
Relationships, yeah, absolutely.
Go the human to human.
Human, yeah, exactly. That is something.
Still learn something.
It's a big problem.
Greg, if I might ask a follow-up question. So from the VC's perspective, how do you end up allocating? Do you end up allocating smaller amounts to more gambles, hoping that one of them will play out big, or is it has
it's a good
factors,
question.
the variables of the diligence, have they shifted to something else?
So a few things are changing, and different VCs look at it through different lenses. We are taking the approach of waiting a little bit longer and seeing whether or not that startup, let's say, is able to get product market fit. If they're able to get some sort of run rate, so if the traction effectively becomes our core metric, and there are VCs doing what you suggested, which is let's do a lot more smaller checks. So have basically effectively a lot more bets out there that somebody's going to be a winner. Our current thesis is to wait a little bit longer. So it means we get a kind of a worse valuation. We have to go into a later round, but wait for companies to actually come in with traction. So because the world we live in means that people can bootstrap through these first iterations and get some customers on, we're saying that's what we'd prefer. Bootstrap, get through the point where you can actually get some people on and see some sort of product market fit before we're interested in taking a look at you. And that's just our thesis right now, but it is evolving on the regular basis. We're constantly talking about how do we allocate, because that's kind of our risk off approach at the moment. Is if they can show traction, then it's something, that's a signal for us.
I guess you would also be looking for in what domain they're also operating in, and where that is potentially going to shift as well in the future. Yeah. What are you going to double down on as an industry?
Yeah, so obviously, you still look at the TAM of the opportunity, and yeah, again, if we've actually invested in a couple of hardware software plays because we feel that's a little bit more defensible. But the idea of just kind of going, hey, I've got the new SaaS platform for accountants, man, that's a hard sell these days for VCs, because it's so replicable, right? Not anybody. The barrier to entry now for that piece of software is really, really low.
And it must be anxiety inducing. Like, I can't imagine having bets out there and then opening your Twitter account in the morning, reading that, oh yeah, the Claude Code just, released a security feature, and now you're thinking about all the security plays that you have. Like, that must be anxiety.
Yeah, literally this morning, I woke up, I opened up my Twitter, and there was an open source new thing to do, kind of invoice and receipt intakes, and it is better than one of the ones that we have. So, and it's free, open source, and it was created over a weekend, kind of thing. So, it is anxiety inducing. One of the things with venture investing is obviously most of your stuff is illiquid. Obviously, in public markets, you can kind of get liquidation or you can get liquid and kind of reallocate. But with your your early stage stuff, it's illiquid. You're betting on a long-term future, and those timeframes are shrinking down to, let's just say much shorter timeframes. So it is anxiety inducing.
I was going to say the anxiety inducing is actually a really good point, and I guess it's sort of one of my main concerns with what's happening right now. I guess is it's from multiple layers. We're seeing a lot of fear and anxiety in everyone, and I think the closer you are to it, the more you see, the more you know, the more afraid that you actually are. And I would say probably over the last 6 months specifically, just really weird behavior from people. And this is not just in organizations, it's in the organizations that we're dealing with. Engineering's right on the cusp of, I guess, this new revolution. So we're seeing a lot of it first, but there's genuine fear in everyone, and it's not dialing down. And so not only do you have all of the geopolitical, all the world stuff that's going on around it, you've got people that are facing identity crises as well, crises, because, hey, my whole life I've been a software developer. Now I'm a what? An systems orchestrator? Or like, what does that even mean? And then
when your identity is locked up into that thing, and now that thing has been kind of democratized, it feels personal.
And it does. And there's so much fear, and everyone responds in different ways, right? They're going to fight, flight, or freeze in response to it. Some people just bury their head in the sands. They're like, just going to keep on doing things the old way. I just can't even face what this even means. And a lot of it's job security as well, right? Like all the headlines out there saying white collar jobs are going to be wiped out in like 3 years or 4 years. Like 2030 has always been the year that they're targeting, but I think it's 2027 now. So, all of this overlaid, it keeps on stacking and nothing slows down. And then you've got the use of AI. And so now we've got so much context that we're absorbing every day. We're context switching now, because if you set a bunch of agents off to do one task while you're sitting there, are you just sitting there, or are you like, well, I'll get the next set of agents to go off on another task? And then you're switching between them, and then you've got to make all the decisions in between. So decision fatigue is amplified as well. And so I don't think that's sustainable whatsoever with an 8-hour workday over 5 days a week to be absorbing this much every day. So we've been asked to do 100 times more without doing any less time. That is just going to create massive mental health issues, burnout left, right, and center. I see so many people burning out right now through this process. So do we get to a point where we do just give up and we're like, you know what, let the AI do it? Or do we get to 4-hour days or 3-day work weeks or something that allows us to actually better cope with the amount of work and amount of decisions load we have to take now as a human?
And you know what, I think the point that you're making is really, really good, because fundamentally, when it comes down to fundamentals, especially from an entrepreneur's perspective, right? Trying to keep up, and as an investor, it might be different, right? Because your assets are at risk. But from an entrepreneur's perspective, someone who's building, right? Trying to keep up with all the news in the AI space is a little bit like wanting to go to the beach, but having to walk around all of Australia to see where you put down your little lawn chair first, right? Yeah. It's going to be exhausting, right? And I'm wondering whether that is also one of the reasons why we're seeing so few people actually putting workloads into production. Everyone can start a POC. Lots of businesses do that, but right now, we at Fleet Guru, we are interviewing PhD candidates who did their PhD about AI and ML before the AI revolution, and they want to come work for Fleet Guru because we're putting things in production. They're seeing the light of day, right? And they say, well, we've worked at lots of other places where we did POC after POC, but nothing was ever released, right? And I'm wondering whether that is a consequence of this initial, if you are small, right, you need to prove defensibility first, which means somehow, right, get to traction, which is incredibly hard when you're really, really small, right? Before, and that means that maybe fewer solutions will make it into production, right, which is understandable. Or if you are already a scaling business, right, there is this process of re-educating what a value proposition in a scaling SaaS business actually means, right? And if you don't have the right leadership and people who are open to the idea to restructure their value proposition around a technology that allows you to point intelligence essentially at any problem, right? That might, stop you in your tracks. We have a few companies here in Australia that do that really, really well, where the leadership completely gets it, right? I'm biased, Fleet Guru is one of them, right? But a lot of other companies, I can imagine, would go into that mode that you just mentioned, Demaza, which is like, oh, sensory overload. I'm just not going to go to the beach at all, right?
Just as an aside, we're investors in Auto Guru, so I'm super happy to hear that.
Hell yeah, let's go. But I was gonna ask, this is a perfect sort of segue. I want to make sure I'm respectful of everyone's time, but it's like, with all this going on, what are those functional things? Like you said, Demelza, you're seeing these people right now, boots on ground. You're helping those small to medium businesses. Greg, you're in, like investing in these companies. Mike, you're working to build these companies. Like, what are the functional tips? People who are losing their minds a little, what are my critical things to focus on, to make sure I'm dialing in, to make sure my business doesn't falter in the next 5 years? I can still live in my home, if it's reliant on me as the entrepreneur here. Like, what's these advice that you give?
We're actually doing a lunch and learn talk this Thursday with a company which focuses on evergreen skills in an AI world. And we've done this talk before in the past, because in development, I think everyone gets too lost in that I've got to know the tool or the framework or the technology, but that's not evergreen. That's not the skills that's going to take you through most of your life. But focusing on things that are more evergreen, which is sort of the metacognitive, and as well as the soft skills. So focusing on skills is what I would say. And the metacognitive is really important, right? Because it's things like learning how to learn. So knowing how to quickly adapt and know when to be a teacher, when to be a student, your mindset as well. And so a lot of that comes into like resilience, like looking at that whole thing of like, what's in my control, what's out of my control, what can I influence? Like, just focus on the things that you actually can control. And attention management is a big piece as well. It's always been very distracting in tech, with like Slack and Teams and emails and phones and social media and the news and like the next big thing. You really have to learn how to dial that down and know when to dial in. Take a little bit of information, think about what you're going to do with it, be a bit more experimental mindset. Again, sort of metacognitive of going, what can I learn from this? Is it something that I want to start, stop, and continue? But I guess it's really just focusing in, I think, on those evergreen skills that really get you through whatever the next evolution is going to be. Connecting with humans, empathy, storytelling, none of that sort of stuff is ever going to change. And thinking of metacognitive, as I said, learning how to learn, mindset, attention management, those are things that I would recommend as tips.
Beautiful.
I think, definitely getting your hands dirty, doing your own, this is going to sound silly, but doing your own research, right? So when I say that, what I mean by that is like, similar to what Demel said, is like, be a student, understand what you're getting into, get your hands dirty. There's, I've had a lot of people ask me, because I'm kind of in in the game. Oh, can you help me get set up with X or Y? And it's like, no, the actual the learning curve that you have to do to learn it yourself is actually part of the value.
Also longevity, right?
So of course, of course you can give some tips. You don't want you're not just letting people out to dry, but the value that you get out of learning and making mistakes and testing things and creating that little small pot, however deep you want to go into those tools, is actually part of the learning. But there's lots and lots, like there's literally an infinite amount of knowledge out there, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you want to find it, to get some good information on how to start. I kind of recommend people to start on the super easy stuff, Lovable and Replit, that kind of stuff. Cowork, so Claude's Cowork is really, really good for kind of some orchestration stuff before you get into the deeper stuff. So don't just like download Claude Code, CLI, and try and figure it out from there. That's like on hard mode. Start some of the other stuff and do research. Find a bunch of YouTube channels that you like. If you can understand it, then start there and go forward. But get your hands dirty. Start learning it yourself.
Beautiful, Mr. Mike. Words of wisdom.
Completely agree with everything that has been said so far. I think annotating or adding to that, I'd say I tend to go back to my product management roots, and I'd say that the big difference that we're seeing now is sticking to beach metaphors because we're on the Gold Coast here, so
sorry to you got a river.
I miss the Gold Coast. I live there. So.
Oh, the mouse come over. Fantastic, good stuff. Well, I think in the past, right, only a few people got to access the technology beach, and they either had to access it through university or through years of self-training, right? That's not the case anymore. The beach just opened up, and everyone can walk on the beautiful silicon sand, right? Everyone can start building their own sand castles. Now, how sophisticated those sand castles are, and whether they're going to stand, the tides and the wind and so forth, that requires a little bit of expertise. But ultimately, I think the core principles remain the same, right? Find a problem, learn the outcome, not the process to get the outcome, the outcome, and then find a way to deliver that outcome for the user in the most audacious and simple way, form, or shape possible, right? What does it look like to, book a car maintenance appointment where the mechanic and the driver only need to, text, yes, I'm available, right? And everything in between is being automated away, right? What does it look like to have, someone plan out holidays for the rest of their entire lives, right? If they wanted to, right? Just to be able to take advantage of advanced bookings and things like that, right? With the ability to change anything at the same time. I think this technology has allowed us to be more ambitious in the way we are solving problems, often protracted problems. But the challenge now is that find a problem, understand the outcome, and then build towards that. And I'd also say that's probably a little more defensible, right, than just saying, "Ooh, I have a new process," right, that solves this other problem just in a different and maybe a little more efficient way. That can be replicated quickly.
Oh, man. And I think, to wrap it up, because I got the privilege of sort of interviewing Sam, that's in Fleeker at the moment, who's head of the AI team. He was just saying, you gotta kind of get out there, right? Ask the right questions, make sure you're delivering value. And like you said, Demelza, like critical thinking, right? Just keep asking the question, how do I learn from this? Like soft skills that keep going on. And Greg, as you said, what is defensible these days? And, I think those are, I find actually beautiful because it takes us back to what is human, right? What are those relationships we build? What are those things that we actually value? And it's not the .com era or the AI boom is now sort of dialing down to the point where investment's not going to come just because it's .ai, right? It's not going to come just because it's a fancy new tech. It has to be real value. It's not going to survive in this world if it's not. But if we keep our value mindset, we'll make it through. And so just to end it all, finish it all up. First and foremost, thank you to all my guests. But with the pillars of the 1,000-year plan, for me, it's a movement as much as it is a show. The things that drive us all is freedom through faith, focus, and fortitude. Right? You need the faith to make you through. Focus, like you said, Demelza, it's easy to get lost. Fortitude, Greg, to make sure that you are putting the hard yards in, or you won't actually learn. And we're here to be the movers, not the moved. The world will sway you everywhere, but if you can set your own sails, you can sort of take your own course. So to everyone that was listening, I hope it was high value. I appreciate my guests so much for coming on. I would do this for so many more hours continuously, but we have work to do apparently.
Cloud's not going to code itself yet.
That's right.
Not yet. So thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate you guys, and I will speak to